Welcome back to another video. You guys have asked for a few more actual cooking videos, some recipes, and also you've been asking about Dutch food, so I thought I would do a video showing you off some Stamppot dishes. Stamppot is not one particular dish, it's a class of dishes which consist of a potato mashed together with some kind of vegetable. And if you want to know what it means, stamp comes from the same root or same etymology as like stomp your feet, or stamp, to stamp press something onto it. So stampen or to stamp means to mash something together. So, and pot just means pot means pot or vessel. So it's just a simple dish. Dutch food is not very complicated, but like I said, it's always a potato with a vegetable. Even though the stamppot itself is older than the introduction of potatoes, because if you didn't know, potatoes are not native to the Netherlands, they're not native to Europe in general, just like most members of the nightshade family, like potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, chilies, tobacco, those all come from the New World, the Americas. So, and even after the Age of Discovery, it took a while for potatoes to become a staple here in Europe, but since it became a staple, it's what the base for every stamppot. So, because potatoes are the base, every stamppot starts off by a pot of boiling water, salted boiling water, and I'm gonna add my potatoes, and I'm just going to cook those through until they're nice and tender, so I can mash them. And another thing I'm going to do, most stamppot uses a rookworst or smoked sausage. Rook means smoke, sausage is worst, so rookworst means smoked sausage. So that needs to go in some simmering water for about 20 minutes. So you can have a stamppot with any kind of meat or no meat at all, but rookworst is probably for most stamppot, that's a classic. For things like hutspot, which is potatoes and carrots and onion, some braised beef is the most classic. But in this case, I'm using some rookworst, so that can go, my potatoes can go, and then I can start making my stamppot, which is a leek stamppot, which is not a super classic one. I just made it up a couple of years ago, but it's based on all the traditions that stampots share. So I just have a little bit of butter that's melted. I'm gonna add some bacon, just because I had a couple of slices of bacon. So why not add them, give some nice flavor. So I'm just gonna fry that off. And now that the bacon has fried off, I'm just going to take that out and keep that separate until later on. And while that bacon was frying off, I also cubed some cheese, so we'll use that later. But first, in the bacon fat and the butter, even though I said it's a leek stamppot, I am going to add a little bit of onion for some flavor. I'll add some leeks, and I'll add a bit of garlic, and I'm just going to let this cook down a bit. I'm using bacon and cheese, so I'm not going to add salt. If you want to keep it vegan or vegetarian, you'll want to add a little bit of salt here to help cook this down. And also, if this starts to brown, you don't want that, so just add a splash of water. But yeah, just keep working on this until everything is nice and soft. Alright, now we turn this into a stamppot. So my potatoes were done, I just drained those, and all my leeks and onions and garlic have softened. So I'll add those to the pan. I'm also going to add a little bit of fresh spring onions, just to bring some of that onion flavor back that we lost from stewing this down, and also for a little bit of a vibrant color, because the leeks have gone a little bit more gray, a little duller. So we'll also add back in the bacon, make sure to get all the fat as well. And then we're going to start mashing. And when you're happy with that consistency, throw in your cubes of cheese, and the residual heat will let that melt. So we'll just fold that through. And I'll show you a close-up in a minute when I plate up. But this is stamppot 1. I'll do a couple of stamppot dishes in this video. So, but I'll film that over a couple of weeks, so you'll probably see my outfit change and stuff. But I'm gonna film the the dishes as I make them, so that will be spread out over a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's number 1 done. And we serve that with some mustard to go with the rookworst. But dat is prijsschotel met spekjes en kaas met rookworst or leek stamppot with bacon, cheese, and some smoked sausage. The next stamppot we're gonna make is probably the most classic of all. It's hutspot, which is carrots, onions, and potatoes. But to start off, I'm just gonna make my meat. I have a shoulder pork chop, and I'm just going to wrap that in some foil, make a nice little package, make sure the ends are closed. This is not really about the meat, this is just what I choose to have with it, so I'll just make it quick. I just season that with some harissa spices and some salt. And I'm just going to pop that in my Ninja Foodie, and I'll just bake that for about 20 minutes. So, to get the actual hutspot started, I have a pot of salted boiling water. I'm just going to add some chunks of potato, and that can do its thing. And then you could absolutely boil the carrots and the onions with the potatoes. Most of the time people do it separately. I prefer that as well. And instead of just boiling it, I like to do that in a little pan. So I have that on the heat, low to medium heat. I'll add a little bit of oil. And I'll put in my carrots and roughly the same amount of onions. And to that, I'll add a little bit of salt. And I'm just going to cook that down a bit. I don't want any color on that because that is not traditional. I just want it to soften, and then I'll just add a little bit of water, and I'll just have that cooked down more and more, and I'll keep adding water if needed. So I'll just stew it pretty much. So yeah, as my vegetables start to soften, I'll just add a splash of water. And I'll put my lid on, and I'll just let that cook until everything is completely soft, and I'll replenish the water if and when needed. Alright, the potatoes are done. I just drained those, and I checked the carrots. They were easy to squish. That means they're done as well. So I'm just gonna put those in with the potatoes. And then comes the stump part out of Stamppot. And again, I'm just gonna mash it all together. By the way, when I said hutspot is a classic, it really is. It's older than the introduction of the potato to Europe. And before potatoes, this was made with parsnip. And I'm actually thinking maybe I'll do one of those in this video as well, with the old school way with parsnip instead of potato. But yeah, just give it a mash. Mix everything through. And if you want to make it really Dutch, you take some gravy or the pan drippings, and with the ladle you make a little well, put your gravy in, and that is a classic Dutch stamppot, in this case with carbonade or pork chop. The next stamppot is a zuurkool stamppot or sauerkraut stamppot. So as always, we'll start by boiling some potatoes. I've just cut these into chunks, and I'm just going to cook them until they're fork tender. And we also need some zuurkool or sauerkraut. So I just have some boiling water here, a little bit about this much. And I'm just going to make sure my sauerkraut is submerged. And I'm simply going to boil that. And to go with that, we're going to have a smoked sausage. So I just have some water here that's at a simmer, and I'm just gonna put that in there for about 20-25 minutes. And yeah, Dutch cooking is really simple. I just need to let this cook until everything is done, and then we're ready to stamp or mash together. Oh, and one thing I should mention, most stamppot, like the hutspot for example, you can boil everything in one pot. With sauerkraut you can't, because the acid in the sauerkraut prevents the potatoes from getting soft, so you can't mash them. So you absolutely have to cook the sauerkraut and the potatoes separately. But things like hutspot you can absolutely make in one pot. I just think it brings out the flavor a lot better if you cook it separately and then combine it, but you could do one pot meals with that. Alright, it's been about 25 minutes. The potatoes are done. I just drained them. And now I'm going to take my sauerkraut and add them to the potatoes. And mash it all together. And if you want to make it a little smoother, you can add like a couple of tablespoons of the cooking liquid in as well. And that will just make it a little smoother. And there's sauerkraut Stamppot. We're serving it with some rookworst and again some mustard for the rookworst. And traditionally on sauerkraut you have a little bit of white pepper. And again, if you want to be really Dutch, you can put a little well of gravy in there. Let's do one more Stamppot, and I'm going to do hutspot again, but the classic way. So I'm going to use parsnip instead of potato. I'm going to do it all in one pot. Have some salted boiling water. I'm going to add onion. Here I have some chunks of carrot. Roughly the same amount as onion. And again, roughly the same amount of parsnip. And I'm just going to boil that until that is soft enough to mash. And I'm just going to serve that with some grilled sausages. So I have my Ninja Foodie going, and I have 2 sausages, so I'll just grill. And the vegetables have finished cooking. They're completely tender now. So I just drained them, and I'm going to mash them. Serve that with my sausages and the classic Dutch gravy well. And that is the last Stamppot for this video. Some hutspot the old-fashioned way with parsnip with some grilled sausages. So those were 4 different Stamppot dishes. If you like this kind of content, let me know and I might do more like this. There's plenty more Stamppot to do. Like very traditional ones are with kale, for example, or curly endives or things like that. So there's many more options. But yeah. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Until next time, bye for now.